not going to allow him to have the same sort of carry threat. And it does suggest that H2K potentially looking to put a bit of priority on the Shen, simply because champions like Fiora, like Gangplank, are very good into Shen, who is a very safe laner, and while he doesn't lose lane, he doesn't necessarily win it either.
Indeed. Sivir will also be taken off the table by Splyce here. Nidalee aimed at Trashy here as well from H2K. Just waiting on the rest of these bans coming in from these two teams. So expecting
things like Karma could very well be on the high priority list. Yesterday we saw a lot of bans towards Jankos. In particular, things like the we've seen the Nidalee, Elise, Rek'Sai with things that they basically said, hey, we want to take Jankos away from these, and he went back to the Hecker, in which he was still able to be very aggressive early on with.
I'm kind of expecting a potential Bard ban against Splyce. It is the most banned champion against them with 15 currently, so we'll see if that rounds it off. Malzahar ban from Splyce. That was 100%, actually 90% pick ban yesterday. Saw him 6 times, in fact. He has definitely risen up the ranks.
Oh, yeah. We heard this actually from Trashy on the desk yesterday as to why we're seeing less Victor and Azir. Yes, they did have minor nerfs on patch 6.14, but with the rise of Malzahar now being super dominant, it's actually shifting the meta in the mid a little bit more.
Yeah. Very, very true. So Shen was the final ban actually from H2K, leaving that bot open if Mikyx wants it. Seeing some really good plays from him so far. Draven going to be the final ban against Freeze, of course.
So still a respect ban being owed. Does mean that Karma is likely going to be the priority for H2K. Things like Gnar, Trundle still available. The Rek'Sai is still up. Bard still up if Mikyx wants to put some priority onto that. And I'm just looking along with the junglers. I feel like Rek'Sai is going to rise in popularity. So if H2K lock this one in, I expect that Splyce are then going to immediately go for, hey, we want the Rek'Sai pickup, and they might even look to go for an early Ashe.
Yeah, Hover over the team there, of course, was picked over in LCK earlier this week. Karma, first pick, coming in from H2K now. So I'll be starting off the picking for them. Oh, 2 fast lock-ins. There's the Bard we were just talking about, and the Elise for Trashy.
Oh, so he's decided to go for a little more early game power. Still, you can have a lot of pressure, similar to the Rek'Sai, but you have a bit of extra damage behind it, a bit more oomph in your punch. And so Trashy going to be picking that one up. I think that it fits his playstyle nice. You've already started to form a good roaming pair with the Bard and the Elise. Great pick potential. You have a lot of mobility with the Magical Journey. You can set up for the Tempered Fate too once you hit that level 6 mark. So far, strong early game champions coming out from the side of Splyce.
H2K, what are they going to draft? Are they going to do another H2K composition? Remember the last time we were casting in Vedius, they literally drafted the H2K composition, the most picked champion in every single role.
Well, right now, I think the safe picks would be to go for jungle and AD carry. As we mentioned earlier, the Rek'Sai available. You could go for the Olaf if you want to. Jankos has brought it out a couple times. Works quite nicely into the Elise and does scale very well. But there's also things like the Gragas available for the CC. But given that the jungler has already been picked up, they don't want to put any priority on it right now.
Taking a significant departure, actually, from the quote-unquote H2K composition. Irelia going into top lane for Odoamne, so a carry being picked up there. And the Lucian for bot lane for Freeze as well, something a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, typically we see Freeze put a lot more emphasis on things like the Ashe, the Caitlyn, a little bit more utility, but he has decided to go back towards the solution. We've been seeing a lot more of the mid-game build of the Ghostblade into Black Cleaver rather than the Essence Reaver that we did see come in for a little while after the initial nerfs. Clearly, a lot of AD carries are saying that, hey, he's still really strong right now. Even after the hits, he can do a lot of work. His laning phase still nowhere near as powerful as it was before, but definitely works out. The issue I have with the Irelia this early on as well is the fact that Trundle and Olaf are still left up, who are both really good picks into the Irelia, and they will naturally outscale come and it will mitigate a lot of her split pushing power.
And that Olaf is exactly what's going to be picked up here by Splyce. And with Elise already being picked up, of course, that's going to go into top lane now. Banned 7 times yesterday and picked twice. So Olaf definitely in the meta. And Caitlyn as well for Kobbe.
He's really flexible too. One of the great things about him, you can put him in the top or in the jungle. Hey, we've seen Faker pull it out on mid. You could even go that way if you really want to.
If there's an Irelia in the mid lane as well, yes.
Yeah.
That was the reason.
But Olaf is a fantastic pick into the Irelia. He can trade with her exceptionally well. Once you hit the level 6 mark, his ultimate means that Irelia doesn't have the stun, and that's one of the big things that she is so good at trading with. And the lower his health goes down, the harder he hits. And typically you're going to want to build a lot of health on Olaf. So it's a pretty favorable matchup. And so I would imagine H2K are going to look to avoid it come the early game.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. H2K just finalized their roster with Vladimir for Ryu and the Rek'Sai to go into the jungle here for Jankos.
So pretty well-rounded closeout. You have the Vladimir, good during laning phase, pretty much good throughout. Obviously, he did have a bit of a hit, so that the changes to his passive mean that, you know, now if you build more AP, it's better for your HP, and if you build HP, you get a little bit less AP. So his early game hurts. So if you go for the Spirit Visage early, he doesn't trade as strongly as he did before, but he's still pretty potent. He can still clear waves quickly. He's good in a lot of matchups. He doesn't really have many bad ones, especially with Malzahar taken off the table. And then the Rek'Sai is basically saying, hey, you know, Jankos, good early ganker, very well-rounded, can offer peel, can offer engage, just a very good jungler all in all.
Can still be very oppressive, of course, that Vladimir, as you were just talking about. But final pickup of Cassiopeia for Sencux in the mid lane. Cassiopeia actually does pretty well early, so maybe Vladimir won't be able to just completely run over Cassiopeia like a lot of other control mage matchups.
It's quite an interesting matchup, actually, because early on, Sencux won't quite have the same sort of wave clear, but he will definitely be able to trade back. So the Vladimir has to be careful about if he wants to try and constantly push up the wave. But we can talk more about the matchup when we actually get into game.
That we can.
What I really want to talk about is Splyce's composition, very centered around pick, a lot of skirmishing that they can set themselves up for, and they also scale very well come the mid and late game. So early game, I expect Trashy, something he's been doing a lot of recently, is constantly trying to set up his laners for success, and then come the mid game is really where this Splyce composition I think can shine. Meanwhile for H2K, low on crowd control, but very similar in terms of their skirmishing, also have a big spike come the mid game with the Trinity Force Irelia and the Lucian Black Cleaver into Ghostblade build. So I think we could see a lot of fighting around the mid game.
I mean, that's definitely a possibility, Vedius, but we're going to see the coaches shake hands before game one of this best of two here between H2K and, of course, Splyce. And as we were talking before, feel like this one's going to be one of the more closer matchups today when you take a look at the schedule. Possibility for a 1-1. Analysts are saying the 2-0 on the desk, but we'll find out. As you can see, the full team compositions and the full player rosters as well. Use hashtag H2KWin and hashtag SPYWin. Get your votes in on Twitter. And we'll be checking in later on into this game where your heart lies. But we'll be getting into this one very shortly. We're getting hyped, Vedius. The crowd's getting hyped. We're about to be getting into game one here in the arena. And it should be a very fun one to start off the day.
Yes, it should be, Pulse. Now, as we mentioned earlier on, H2K drafting quite low on crowd control. I gotta be honest, I do favor Splyce's comp right now, largely because I think that they have winning lanes in both top and in bot. There's very little that you're going to be able to do against the Caitlyn Bard, especially with Lucian being so low range. And then the Irelia really does struggle up against an Olaf, especially once you hit that level 6 mark. Early on, you can trade pretty effectively, but it's one of those matchups where if you go in as the Irelia, you stun him, and then you try to retreat, he's then just going to chase you down with axes. So it can be quite a volatile one, but it's definitely an exciting one. So I expect if we are going to see a lane swap to come out from H2K, because of how difficult this early game will be for them.
A possibility. Everyone has spread out. Currently, Odoamne is in the top side of the map. Meanwhile, Mikyx was just under a bit of fire from Freeze and Vander, but they'll back off into their jungle now. They will be fine. And Water just going down into the river, so we're seeing a fairly defensive start from both teams. Ward went over to the Gromp in from H2K. And I see Mikyx and Kobbe heading to the top side, so actually looks like they're going up there, but this may be a read for H2K also sending their bot lane up there for Australia lanes.
It looks like Splyce have read the lane swap from H2K, so they're going to guarantee themselves the 2 versus 2. They could also pick themselves up the Krug if they wanted to, but given the positioning of the lane, they just want to get into lane as fast as possible, start their early shove, and just start being that aggressive Caitlyn and Bard. So right now, the early game going exactly the way in which Splyce won it. And this is actually great for Trashy in where he wants to set up his ganks, because Bard is a really good lane to gank for, especially once he hits the level 6 mark. Mid is a bit rough, because not only is it a Vladimir, but you've got no solid crowd control to really lock the Vladimir down. Even if you throw down the miasma, he can still pull through it, and then he can flash afterwards if he's in a bit of danger. But then on top of that, Wunder, a lot of good utility with the axes. Follow that up with a good cocoon. You can quite easily force the flash out of the Irelia. So the side lanes are where Trashy should look to put a lot of his pressure. And as you mentioned earlier, last week is something that I noticed a lot from Splyce in the game versus G2. he was constantly looking for ganks in the early game, really trying to help his laners out.
I mean, even in this 1v1, I mean, Wunder has such a big advantage over Odoamne because of that lane matchup. Those axes just doing so much damage in the early game. Undertow is very difficult to deal with. All you can really do as Irelia is just stun him and run away. Like, you actually just can't trade against him, otherwise he'll chain axe you 100-0. Jankos is walking to the bottom lane. I don't think he was tagged out there by Wunder. Odoamne jumps forwards, gets the stun down, looking for the knock-up here from Jankos. Quick ghost comes out from Wunder, but a flash and a knock-up. Wunder's going to go down. First blood to Jankos.
Really good gank from Jankos. He waited for Wunder to just ever so slightly extend in the lane. He knew the Wunder was going to go for the early push. He prioritized just clearing the bottom half of the map, but look at Trashy. He has found Jankos.
He has, and Rek'Sai not that great trading one-on-one against Elise this early on. So he'll back away. Preyseeker will keep track of him as he walks into the bottom lane here. And Wunderwear having to pop both of the summoners. Keep saying Wunderwear because it's actually been many, many weeks since I've casted Wunder. Actually casted him like once a split. So still not used to it. But Trashy and Wunder still in the bot lane. Jankos has shown himself now.
There was a big minion wave in the bot, so Splyce were looking to try and set up a dive onto Odo. Jankos, again, read the play, quickly moved down to the bottom half of the map, and is there to support his top laner. But in terms of a good start, this is exactly what what H2K wanted because of the rough matchup. But you can see even after the gank, Odo is struggling to trade back with this Olaf. And there's still a big CS advantage for Wunder. But this is one of the risks that you have when running Ghost against someone like a Rek'Sai, because it's quite easy for him to get the flash knockup. And when you're not 6, the Ghost doesn't do you very many favors. So you're a little bit more susceptible during the laning phase, which is what Jankos was able to punish. But in terms of the 1v1, it's still not something going to turn it in your favor. Jankos needs to apply more pressure to keep this up, to try and help Odo out as much as he can.
Yeah, he needs to go down there a couple more times, really. Mid lane, Ryu is getting the upper hand over Sencux. Over time, he's managed to get away most of that mana pool from Sencux, so he's trading health for that one.
So in the mid lane, often what you'll see is Sencux trying to match the wave clear will have to burn a lot of his mana, because if you last hit the creep, oh, hang on, bit of a trade in top. As Kobbe even, sorry.
Kobbe.
It's because he's got 2 Bs. That makes it Kobbe other than Kobbe. But bit of back and forth. But yeah, in the mid, what you have is very much Vladimir doing what he normally does, just wave clearing a lot. And because of his sustain with the Crimson Rush, every time Sencux punishes him for overextending, he then just sustains it back up. Just keeping my eye on Jankos right now because he's aggressively putting wards down in the enemy jungle, gone for a very early Sightstone, and he could look for a gank in the top given how much poke damage that Kobbe has taken. And you could just see his pathing. He knows that Trashy has just gone back to base. He could, if he's going to go for a gank, top lane would be a prime target for him right now.
I really like how proactive Jankos is being early, but this is going to be seen out by Splyce. But definitely controlling the early game. And if you do control the Splyce, then you do control the universe. So he knows what to do here. 6 minutes into this game, Vedius. Slight advantage for H2K. They just need to keep it up. And actually, Odoamne has caught up in farm as well. So that initial gank did help him out in the bottom lane.
Well, bear in mind that there is a big minion wave pushing towards Wunder, so he still holds a pretty decent advantage. But Trashy now posturing around the mid, looking to try and punish Ryu.
Gonna step up. They're gonna walk past each other. Trashy shoots out the cocoon. Not really where he wanted it. So Ryu's gonna walk that one off and walk back into mid lane. Also, Jankos was right around the corner just in case something happened.
Just a bit of crosswind, Pulse. So he threw the web out and then a strong breeze blew it in a different direction. You know, it happens to the best of us, you know. Can't control that sometimes. But Trashy, it was a little bit risky to go for a gank onto Vladimir, especially level 6 Vladimir, because his damage, when you combine that with Jankos as well, can be surprising onto an early game Elise. But I think his intention was more to relieve some of the pressure onto Sencux, because as we were mentioning earlier, a lot of Sencux's early game is just trying to clear out all the waves that Ryu is shoving underneath his turret. So he will go low on mana, and he just needed to pick up his tier. He's also gone for the double Dorans, just for a bit of extra trading power, and also to help a little bit more with the mana sustain. So,
wow, 59% to Splyce actually in this game. A couple of weeks ago, I mean, it would have absolutely been reversed. See both the junglers here in the bottom lane. More specifically, Jankos. But in this one-on-one, Odoamne. I mean, that was a Preyseeker to get the assist, but Odoamne just straight up 1v1 Wunder.
And he should not be losing that matchup. That is That is actually pretty crazy. I hope we get a good replay of that because I want to see exactly how Wunder just gave away his life. I mean, I would understand it if Odo had completed the Sheen, but he's only got himself a Ruby Crystal. He even has a dagger, and Wunder going down like that, that should not happen, Pulse. That is typically not how the matchup goes. Yeah. So,
I mean, we saw how well Wunder was doing in the early game. I mean, that's how the lane goes. He throws axes at Irelia, and Irelia has to deal with it and cry on the tower.
But then every time she tries to go in, I mean, sure, he loses health, but then he can just sustain back up with the W.
Right.
Then his Relentless Swing, or his Thunder Swing, the thing that draws lightning and does a lot of damage. That's the one, Rek'Sai.
That's the Badger.
Ooh, actually does a chunk. Speaking of
Mikyx is going to have to body block a lot of this, and Kobbe walks back into it. Freeze got so much value from that culling, forced him against the wall, but stands still, farming up the minions. Kobbe hits him with the headshot. Freeze now has to back away.
So a lot of back and forth trading. Freeze hit the level 6 much sooner than Kobbe did, so he tried to take advantage of that, push them back, and Kobbe has been eating a lot of poke from this Karma, which Mikyx has not quite been able to reciprocate on the other side. But very back and forth lane, you can see all across the board, farm is pretty even except for in the top lane, which is why I'm so confused as to how Wunder ended up dying in the 1v1. But now Jankos posturing around the top half of the map, could look to try and get a dive down onto Mikyx, but still very risky with a full health Kobbe who still has his heal.
Mikyx getting tagged by the Soul Flare as well. Here comes Jankos once again. Was he actually spotted over that wall? He must have been as he tunnels in. Here comes a TP as well for H2K for the backup. Mikyx, great exhaust onto Jankos, may save Kobbe's life. Odoamne is looking for him though, does manage to get out of range, but not going to be so lucky for Mikyx. And Ryu actually rotating in from the middle lane. Kobbe getting dope underneath the inner tower. He'll drop Sencux, missed timing on the ultimate. Ryu will just walk off. 4-0, H2K starting off the game.
H2K with the hyper proactive early game. Mikyx had taken so much damage from the trading back and forth. Odo was struggling in the farm department, and so H2K felt like they needed to force a play. And I mean, what an opportunity that they were able to take advantage of. The fact that they put the ward down, Odo then teleported into the ward as well. Just great setup overall from H2K. They get themselves 2 kills onto the bottom lane that really should have had a dominant factor in this 2 versus 2, and what should have been favorable lane matchups for Splyce has quickly been turned around from H2K. So you can see Jankos cutting off the escape route of Splyce, forced both Mikyx and Kobbe to split away. Vladimir comes in from the flank, seeing if he can get something onto Kobbe, who sticks around just a little bit too long, doesn't expect this sort of an engage. Ryu is easily able to dive him under the turret, and then Sencux misses everything. A little bit too soon on the ultimate. Misses the miasma, puts it on top of the pool rather than in his escape route, then misses the Q. He just doesn't have the damage to continue the chase, so Splyce just being pushed around by H2K in this early game.
Yeah, in matchups that really should not be winning. 2-0-1 Irelia coming out of laning phase against an Olaf. Now Splyce are going to take the top tower, but that's going to be traded for bottom. Meanwhile, while that trade was happening in top, Splyce did take the bottom lane tower with Trashy. So they did have that 1 tower advantage and will maintain that now as H2K push down the bottom lane. But still, H2K with a pretty good advantage, and more importantly, have the gold situated on the places they want it to be. Like Odoamne having a lot of that gold, getting closer towards the Triforce for an early pickup is really vital. We've seen firsthand what an early Triforce Irelia can do, Vedius.
Oh yeah. I just think back to Alphari 30-minute Trinity Force, literally 1v9.
Yeah, quite literally. It was the Alphari show.
I will never forget through an exhaust how he one-shot a Twitch.
That was disgusting. So Odoamne, we need to stop giving him kills.
I mean, he's very close to that Trinity Force. Another wave or 2 of farm, which he's going to pick up in the top lane, and he will be a pretty happy Badger. But all across the board, I think H2K can just be pretty happy with how the early game went. Right now, the gold is pretty even because Splyce picked themselves up 2 turrets, simply because with the teleport play, Odo went to the top half of the map. Trashy moved to the bottom with Wunder, who already had a wave pushing in his favor, so they quickly took that tier 1. And then they rotated Wunder back up to the top half, along with Kobbe and Mikyx, which then enabled them to take that second tier 1. So in terms of map control, it's still in favor of Splyce, but H2K have garnered themselves the stronger early game lead. They have the kills on the right targets. They've gotten through this rough laning phase that they should have experienced. And a lot of that is off the back of Jankos and his proactivity. And now Wunder is really struggling in this 1v1.
Oh man, Irelia beating up an Olaf here.
But this is what happens when you get such early Trinity Force. It's supposed to be quite an expensive item. You get delayed during the laning phase, so you hit your spike later. But now, because Odo is level 9 to the level 8 of Wunder, because he's already pretty much completed his Trinity Force, he's now really starting to struggle up against this Irelia. So H2K doing a great job.
I'm really struggling against Irelia. Irelia is literally taking his tower, like 1v1. I mean, he had the assist of Jankos, so he couldn't step up, but like, that almost hardly ever happens, especially in something like this. Cannot stress that enough. But H2K with this lead in the early game, plus that dragon, Splyce are going to take the consolation prize of a red buff. Almost stolen away by Vander, actually, there. But generally very impressive by H2K. Definitely on the upswing in these last couple of weeks. I'm going to hold that for a second as Ryu is holding down the fort mid lane as Trashy is coming in here as well with the rest of his team. And Jankos also going to defend this tower. Splyce don't even want to push here. Because I was talking to Vander yesterday, and he was saying, well, yesterday was kind of one of the more easy games coming into the next 4, of course, in terms of strength of schedule. Splyce will be one of the biggest tests for them. Because it is top of the table now, not facing those middle of the pack, bottom of the pack teams. And so far, they're doing really, really well. Well,
as you rightly said, the beginning of this test is going well. You know, you get a couple of easy questions normally, and they've just powered through them. They're already halfway through very early on.
But will there be that annoying question on the last page?
That 8 marker.
The 8 marker.
I mean, that's where the real quest comes in, you know? We've got to proper evaluate, you know, the evaluate question, Pulse.
There's always that tilt question as well on the back of the test, where sometimes they put it there and you assume you're done with the test, but actually there was a question there and you lose like 8, 9 marks or something. Really annoying. Well, hope that doesn't happen to H2K in this game.
We'll have to keep their eyes out on it. Moving forward, though, because we're approaching the 50-minute mark, we have to remember that both teams do have quite good scaling compositions. I would give the late game in favor to Splyce because they have the Caitlyn over the Lucian, who has decided to go once again for the Ghost Blade into Black Cleaver build. Wunder against Irelia, because Irelia, she typically has a good, decent early game, I would argue, and then into a very powerful mid game, and then it sort of extends to about the 30-35 minute mark, and then past that, she just falls off because the Trinity Force isn't as effective. You have 4 item AD carries that would just shred through you already, who's now considered squishy. And then you've also got Wunder, who he will also slightly fall, but he's going to have so much more power because he will be naturally tankier thanks to his ultimate. And it's going to be so much easier for him to stick onto those backline targets thanks to his CC removal. And then Cassio, I mean, 6 items, you know? She can literally have 6 damage items. So the late game is going ever so slightly in favor of Splyce, so H2K need to take advantage of the powerful mid game that they have. Trinity Force is done, Ghost Blade is done, Spirit's Visage done, H2K really powerful, and they might force a fight right now.
Mikyx looking for the engage, Tempered Fate comes down, flash over it by Freeze though, he'll get to safety, maybe. Wunder and Trashy are looking to come in and close the noose. Vander gets called out, Jankos and Freeze are going to come in here for the engage. They lose Vander, Mikyx dropping low, Kobbe looking to back off as well, and all Splyce looking to disengage now, but Wonderwear coming in for the back lines along with Trashy, takes down Freeze, chasing after Jankos as well. Ryu trying to get in range to try and salvage the situation, but now he's caught under the undertow with Trashy. He goes into the Sanguine Pool, but Mikyx with a re-engage along with Kobbe. Jankos looking to back up, but this is their 4-0 fight for Splyce.
Splyce had a rough early game, and after one fight, have rectified it entirely. 4 kills picked up for Splyce. They've gained control over the gold lead. They've gained control over the map. And how could we ever doubt Splyce, Pulse? They just seem to know how to play these fights, and everything just went so well for them.
I mean, this is exactly how the game went yesterday for them in Game 1 versus Fnatic. Lost the early game, lost a bunch of kills in the lane swap. This time we had standard lanes, but then they just won a fight really, really hard, and the game just swung. Kobbe, that was the wrong way, but I'm going to forgive you because your positioning was good. But still, Splyce coming right back in this game, now have the goal lead, now have the tower lead.
So many impressive things went down in that fight. Fortunately, we're going to have a replay to properly break them down. So the exhaust gets used very early on onto Freeze. Now that AD carry's flash is gone. Keep your eye on Wunder. He's coming in from the flank. H2K is still sticking around to fight. Freeze comes back in to try and support his AD carry. H2K think they can win the 3 versus 3, especially with Odo doing so much damage to Mikyx and Kobbe, but then Wunder on the backline in the bottom of your screen cleans up the AD carry. Sencux is there to provide support. His single target DPS is enough to shred through Odoamne, and then Wunder can just be left to clean up the rest of H2K. Just everything went so well, and I mean, I want to praise Mikyx because that magical journey was a big part of what enabled Splyce to separate H2K, and then once they were divided, it just felt like Splyce were just so much better at cleaning up the fight.
I mean, I underestimated the power of Wunder and Trashy there with Olaf and Elise. I mean, they were like 2v3 and just destroying them. So much damage coming out there, and yeah, splitting up the fight with the magical journey. Yamalo enjoying the ice cream. Pretty chill right now. He's almost done. This game is not almost done, though.
Yeah, he's going to have to get another one.
Yeah. Still. H2K going to start off this Mountain Dragon. Has been blue trinketed, and Jankos will make his way out. I mean, teleport is up from Wunder, so don't really want to full commit onto this one. Whereas Odoamne has to stay with the team. And he was not. He was in mid lane, so they would have been outnumbered.
So this is actually really smart from Splyce because HTK were like, hey, you guys, come fight us at the Drake. Woo! We don't have TP. And then Splyce were like, no, because we do have TP and we know you don't. So we're just going to force you to make a decision. Commit to the Dragon, where we're just going to poke you down, where you are going to be forced then to make a decision between fighting 4 versus 5. Or we're just going to take your tower on the other side of the map with Wunder. So HTK had to go, okay, you wouldn't take our bluff. So we're just going to have to back away from the Drake. And now they've had to send Odo to the top half of the map. Now Splyce have the numbers advantage, and if they want, this would be a great opportunity for them to force the Dragon. Ryu may have been called out.
Will Sanguine pull the Q coming out? Wonder where it's just going to charge towards H2K. His team is a little too far behind him. So it was a zoning Ragnarok. But Splyce have full control over the Dragon now. Odoamne still doesn't have TP, so this will be a Mountain Dragon to Splyce. They will have to send someone to top lane to deal with the Irelia threat.
Wunder may even teleport to the top, or they might just try to force a fight. Tempered Fate is not going to land, but this does mean that that top turret is going to take quite a lot of damage from Odo. He doesn't have the minion wave to quite take it away from Splyce, but not bad for H2K. They are going to lose a Drake, but they were able to get a bit more control over the top half of the map. Do want to echo how close this game still is. Only 1,000 gold separates the two teams. Right now, H2K do still have a big spike in the mid game. It's only going to get stronger once they complete that second item, and so Splyce can't afford to be lax just yet.
And Splyce, of course, as you mentioned, have slightly better scaling. Freeze getting caught there by the Cosmic Binding, but the engage coming out here. Odoamne destroys Kobbe. Mikyx will jump over the wall. Sencux now coming into the fight, but meanwhile, in the backline, no one is defending Freeze. No one can defend Freeze. Wunder finds one. He's looking for the second. Goes on to the third. Jankos goes down. Mikyx finds the kill. Vander is the only one remaining from H2K. Another 4-on-1 trade.
Wunder just Ragnarex through the team of H2K, cleanly picking up a double kill, cleanly turning the fight in their favor, and what looks so promising for H2K is going to end in disaster as Splyce pick themselves up a Baron at 20 minutes.
This Baron is just dead. I mean, whether we're not even taking any damage there, 4 kills again. All these fights are going so well for Splyce. And we're talking about these mid-game spikes for H2K and the late game of Splyce, but they're just punishing so well.
I mean, the setup from H2K is good because they realize, hey, there's only 3 members of Splyce, there's 5 of us, we have a good tower diving team, but then Wunder comes in from the flank once again. Easily gets onto Freeze. His flash still isn't up. He's already used the heal. He quickly drops. Odo, he was tanking the turret, and that meant that Wunder had another easy kill because of the setup from the flank. And this is something that we did not highlight earlier on. Splyce's composition, the only real way they can engage is with the Tempered Fate. If they don't have it, then there's no easy way for them to actually start a fight unless Wunder gets the flank off. And what H2K are doing right now is they're making it super easy for him to get the flank off. He doesn't even always have to TP in. In that fight he did, but in the fight previously, he just walked behind them. Yeah. And so many times it is H2K being in a position where they think, hey, we have the numbers advantage, we have good item spikes, we can force a fight, and Splyce just say, okay, maybe you get initial kills, maybe you get the initial damage, but then Wunder comes in from the flank, he gets the cleanup, and there's no way you're going to escape that Olaf when you have 0 summoner spells to help you get to safety.
That was the worst thing. They had nowhere to run after engaging underneath that middle tower. They didn't even take the middle tower. Splyce killed them all before that happened, and now have a pretty significant gold lead, over 4,000 now. And literally a couple minutes ago, we were just saying very close, only 1,000 gold in it, but Splyce really have this advantage, plus the Baron. We'll see how much they can take from this one. But they are immediately onto the map, immediately splitting up, and pushing in all of these lanes. Trashy and Sencux zoning away with the miasma. I don't even know if anyone can stop them here. This tower is going down. They're going to try and defend the mid lane. H2K will do that for now, but yeah, this is not going well.
No, it is not. Right now, Splyce setting up the 1-3-1, having Cassio sitting in a side lane, Wunder sitting in the other, and they can just have Kobbe cleanly sit in the mid lane that set up those traps for a lot of zone control. They might even just set up for a dive in the bottom lane. They have a big minion wave. They can force Odoamne back, and while Vladimir's wave throw is decent, and Jankos dies.
Sencux, the 1v1 kill in the jungle. Jankos just died. He just keeled over and died. Vedius, that's what happened there.
Oops.
Yeah, Splyce onto the bottom tower. This bottom inhibitor tower. There's no one really to defend. Odoamne caught up in the binding. He instantly goes down. Wunder is unstoppable. Ryu coming in from behind, trying to do a Wunder, but doesn't really have the damage, doesn't really have the team there, and Wunder just had to be covering himself. Freeze stepping into the cocoon. Trashy with the punish. Vander getting caught up in the tempered fade. He gets knocked against the wall, stopped in place. Everyone from H2K dying one after another, and Splyce may just look for the win.
Splyce, after a convincing teamfight win, have just walked into the base of H2K, and they're looking to close this one out 23.5 minutes in.
They're onto the second Nexus turret down, they're onto the Nexus, and Splyce gonna close out game one against H2K in 23 minutes.
Great game from Splyce. We wondered about the early game, Pulse.
Yes, we did.
We said laning phase, this is not good for H2K. I was much more in favor of the draft from Splyce. I felt like, hey, they're going to win every single lane. There's no reason why they shouldn't. You know, they have the Olaf, they have themselves the, they have the Caitlyn Bard, really powerful laning phase. They have the Elise as well, so much damage in the early game. And then not only did Odo die 1v1, he gave away the first blood, which, in fairness, I can understand, like, it's not entirely his fault. When you have Ghost, you're a little bit more susceptible. But then also the dive in the top lane from Jankos, everything was going so good for H2K in the early game. They'd got through the rough laning phase. They were going to hit their mid-game spikes, and this is where they needed to force a fight. But a lot of the setups, and a lot of the reason why they lost was because they got separated. They weren't playing as a five-man unit. They weren't anticipating the Olaf. And while initially things looked so promising, whenever Wunder joined the fray, he was just like, Olaf smash now. Like, he literally just came in and cleaned up every single one of those fights.
The craziest thing was that was the fastest game in the split so far, actually out there from Splyce. And with that start as well, you do not expect a game to end so quickly. It was just continuous like errors and really good punishes out from Splyce throughout the game. And that, as we said during game, was very similar to the game yesterday, where they lost the early game, they got picked up a couple times, but then they had one massive punish, which managed to turn the game. Well, we're going to send it now over to the analyst desk to take a look at the fastest game so far in the split.